Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle. Above me here on the screen is Joe Clark, my co-host, as always, and we are going to be discussing the Steelers' loss to the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. Their second loss in a row. The sky seems to be falling in Pittsburgh. We're going to break down what went wrong in that game and just the general direction of the team right now, because that's a hot topic. About halfway through the season, 4-3, with another difficult game coming up. We're going to talk about that Colts game as well at the end of the episode, and in between, some trade deadline talk. Kyle Dugger was traded to the Steelers. We'll recap some of that, as well as what else to expect throughout the next week leading up to the trade deadline. Before we dive in, Joe, I generally label myself as an optimist. And I think most people who read my writing would probably say you defend XYZ person within the Steelers too much, whether that's Tomlin or whoever that might be. I'm kind of at a breaking point at this point with this team, and I think a lot of people, the few optimists that were remaining after the loss to the Bengals, I think are starting to slip away, and I would count myself in that category. Would you count yourself as an optimist? And where are you at with this team right now?
Oh, I definitely count myself as an optimist. I mean, especially early in the season. I mean, we've seen the Steelers get to, the playoffs, 10, 11 wins through some rough starts, but I mean, it really hasn't been anything this bad defensively, just like outright just horrible defensively. And I mean, I can't remember a time that it's really ever been this bad. Like there's like no fight. They're just getting completely picked apart. So I'm with you. I mean, I thought they were gonna come out and win that game against Green Bay. I thought the offense was gonna do good enough, the defense would hold just enough. And for the first half, I was like, all right, yeah. I mean, it feels pretty good. And then the second half, I mean, the defense just completely fell apart. So yeah, I am quickly losing hope, if that hope even still remains.
Yeah, it's not good when everybody's trying to decipher who's calling the plays on defense, and Terrell Austin kind of cleared that up today, and we'll probably talk about that at some point here, but it's not a good sign when people are trying to figure out who to even assign the blame to and whether it's the players or the scheme or what. I mean, it's just a total failure. Some of the high level stats, just going over that real quick, for the defense. This defense that Mike Tomlin said could do historic things turned out historic in the wrong direction. This is arguably the worst Steelers defense of all time. Stephen A. Smith came out and said it on Monday morning after the game that this was the worst Steelers defense he's seen in damn near 30 years. And that led me to kind of research when was the last time the defense was this bad. A lot of people said, what about some of those kind of late 2010s groups that when I guess TJ Watt was just starting to become a thing, but the defense was still very much in transition. They had no cornerbacks to speak of. I think Hayden was just starting to hang up his cleats, and I don't even remember who some of the players were on those teams, but the defenses weren't great. This group is even worse somehow. This is actually the worst defense statistically since 1988, and it's arguable they might even be worse than that, as the worst defense in Steelers franchise history. Right now, they're 30th in total defense. They're dead last, I believe, in pass defense. They are 22nd in scoring defense. 30th in total defense alone. That's the worst mark in franchise history if it holds. Of course, we're only halfway through the season. But even if the Steelers defense makes a miraculous turnaround, we're not getting anywhere near the top 5 that they paid for. It's at best, they're going to end up being like a 15th or a 16th, and that would be like the optimistic outlook. So all that to say, it is truly about as bad as it gets. And I mean, everyone's trying to figure out where the blame lies. Joe, in your opinion, is it old players, just the group got old quick, all these kind of over 30 former stars, if you will? Is it the scheme? Where's the blame?
I mean, I think the biggest thing right now is probably the scheme because the Steelers, I mean, They've done the same thing forever under Mike Tomlin, and right now, so I mean, I guess it's a blend of both. They just don't have the personnel. They don't have the speed in the secondary. They're not making the fundamental plays. They're not tackling. Like I was so annoyed after the Packers game when Tomlin kind of said about the defense, he's like, "Well, it's not really the short throws in the flat. It's more the chunk plays that are hurting us." No, it's the short throws into the flat. Like Tucker Kraft had over 100 yards after the catch by himself because nobody can tackle. Like nobody, the pursuit angles are off. Like the effort, it really didn't seem to be there, especially in the second half. And guys just aren't making plays. So like, yeah, they're old, they're slow, but the failure to adapt and realize that you're old and slow and think that, Jalen Ramsey is going to be, 2017, 2018 Jalen Ramsey. The fact that you think, I mean, Darius Slay, they cut his snaps, so maybe they're finally realizing there. I mean, even TJ Watt's been struggling to get pressure. A little bit. I mean, he's getting chipped at a ridiculous rate. So he's fighting through like
The
three
most in
guys
the
against the
league, right?
quarterback. Yeah, yeah, highest shipper in the league. But then like you're not playing Nick Herbig, who I mean, Alex posted the other day, his pass rush win rate is literally like off the charts. Like he's so far above, and they're playing him like what 27, 29 snaps the last two games, in each game. Like that's just not good enough. Like you have a guy that is early in the season when the defense looked like it was clicking. It was because Nick Herbig was getting after the passer. So they're just not adapting. Like it's just they're Tomlin and I blame Tomlin because really it's mostly Tomlin whose ideas shape the defense, but Tomlin and Terrell Austin just have such a failure to adapt that I think right now is their biggest issue.
Yeah, it's hard to place the blame on the front seven because of how are you supposed to get sacks when the ball's getting out in like 2 seconds, uncontested. The defense is allowing like 3-4 yards of separation, like college. Some of these guys are like college open at times, especially in key moments of the game. That seems to be happening. And to me, that also screams scheme and like they're just not playing aggressive enough. I mean, they said they could match up man to man on anybody, but I don't know what kind of man to man defense allows that much cushion that consistently. And I mean, these are things that have popped up for years with Pittsburgh's defense, but you thought this year it could be different because they've got the personnel that they at least believe in to attempt to do some of the more aggressive things, and it just doesn't. I mean, they have varied up the scheme a little bit here and there, especially in that Bengals game. You saw them try several different things, and none of it worked. So what are you supposed to do there? But Mike Tomlin said that they don't really need to change up the scheme. Cameron Hayward agreed today. He said it's not an X's and O's thing. It's an execution and finishing plays thing. So it seems, I mean, of course, a player's never going to throw the coaches under the bus, which is if they said it was an X's and O's thing, that is like, whoa, that would be like a huge deal if a player said that, especially a defensive captain. So, what do you really expect him to say there when he's asked that? But he is pointing to execution and, if that's the case, if it is just execution and that's what they've diagnosed, that is way harder to fix than fixing some schematic stuff because that just means the players aren't good enough or the players aren't playing well enough. And, at the beginning of the year, I think you could say, well, it's early, let's wait and see. We're beyond that. We're halfway through the season. The Steelers defense is what it is. This isn't going to be a 2024 Philadelphia Eagles situation where they had 4 or 5 bad games and then became the best defense in the league. They're not going to make that kind of turnaround at this point. And so, where do you go from there? And it's really a problem. I wanted to recap. We've kind of not really touched on the Packers game that much other than just talk about, Tucker Kraft. There's some specific things here I wanted to touch on. The defense. The first half was interesting because the Steelers came out with a 9-point lead, but it really felt like the defense was hanging on by a thread. There was some drop passes, some just things that went slightly not the right way for the Packers. And, it really felt like the Steelers got some lucky breaks in the first half. And sure enough, the second half, they got outscored 28-9. How much of because like the offense also was to blame for the second half failures. They didn't really get much done, but looking back at it, it wasn't like the most obvious failures. They just had like a penalty here and maybe a 5-yard loss on a first down run there, and it kind of just barely was not letting them finish drives. I mean, the defense obviously gets the blame, but what was the biggest issue in your mind in the second half there?
I kind of agree offensively. It was your failure to get into, third and manageable situations. I mean, their first drive, and I don't understand like why the Steelers decided at some point in this game to like throw the ball on early downs when Jalen Warner is actually running pretty well. Like they come out first drive in the third quarter, they get the ball, they throw incomplete. Then they throw to Freiermuth in the flat, he gets lit up, and then you have the missed offsides, the pass to Roman Wilson, which leads to a Packers touchdown. And then your next drive's a field goal drive. You run it for 4 yards, and all of a sudden it works. And then they move the ball down the field. Rodgers ended up getting sacked or throwing the incompletion that wasn't a sack on what that was on a 1st and 10, and then that set them back. Then he threw to Calvin Austin on a screen for no gain, and then you had another incompletion. So like when they were throwing on early downs, they weren't getting themselves into favorable situations. When they ran on early downs, they were getting themselves into a position where they could move the ball and at least get into field goal range. So really it was the offense there. And then you look at the one drive where Rodgers got sacked on first down for like a loss of 10. That drive was doomed from the start. So that to me was really where they got themselves out of this game, because I think the offense could have kept up if they weren't trying to throw the ball as much, on first down, and they stuck to, running the ball 4 or 5 yards, and then you have second and manageable, and then, even if you pick
Mhm.
up 2 or 3 yards, then it's third and manageable, and you can move the ball and you can pick up some of these first downs, and so that was really what stood out to me. I mean, the defense was an utter disaster, but I think the offense could have maybe hung around in that game more than they did if they weren't so insistent on throwing the ball on first down.
Yeah, and man, just thinking back to the first week against the Jets, I remember they had some like third and long opportunities that I was like, oh man, this is going to be nothing. And they actually converted them. They were throwing beyond the sticks and, converting stuff at the sticks, whether it was Fryermuth or Jonnu Smith or whoever it was. They were taking some chances on those plays. We have a joke in the Steelers Depot chat that on those third and longs, it's always third and Jalen or third and Jonnu. And it's basically, if it's third and 12, you throw it to them 2 yards beyond the sticks and they get like 2 or 3 yards to give you a slightly better punt situation. But it's like a almost 0% chance of converting. Those kind of plays are a little bit maddening to me. And I get like the Steelers seem to want to play this style of play that's, all right, assuming that they have a top defense and, all we have to do is play conservatively on offense, not give the ball away, not give up kind of like obvious scoring situations like turnovers within your own end, and we're going to win in the end. But I think that has been proven very false at this point, and it's kind of maddening to see over and over again just the check down stuff on third and long. It's just like, okay, you're just giving up on this drive, and so that kind of stuff is frustrating. I wanted to talk about actually going back to why they abandoned the run. The first drive is a mystery to me. You already went over it. 3 passes. One of them was that offsides. Yeah, it was an officiating gaffe. It still would have been, I think, 3rd and 3, so it wasn't a guaranteed conversion if they, if that penalty was called. I think it was 3rd and 8 when that happened. So people point to that and be like, oh, look what could have happened. But it's like, okay, they still had to convert on 3rd and 3, and there's no guarantee that would have happened. But what really went wrong was Isaac Seumalo got hurt, and they had to, kind of abandon the jumbo package, or at least they didn't use it as much. I think they might have used it a couple of times with, did they do it with McCollum, or I think they did.
McCollum, they did it with McCollum a couple of times.
Yeah, but it wasn't nearly as frequent as they would do it with, Spencer Anderson, and I don't think it was as successful either. And so that's part of it. But that injury happened at the end of that first drive in the second half. And so why they came out and went pass when they had a 9-point lead and the run game had been working, that is a great question. But I think, the rest of the game, why they abandoned the run is a little bit more obvious given that Seumalo injury. Now, I did do a Spencer Anderson film room because I believe Brett wanted that last week. And sure enough, now we're in a situation where Anderson might be starting at left guard. So I went ahead and broke that down. Be sure to check that out on the site. I was pretty impressed with his technique and his play overall. I think he's smart. I think he's athletic. And, I think he has pretty decent technique. There's nothing that was like red flag at all with his play. It was kind of a small sample size at guard. But, yeah, overall, I mean, he ended up against Micah Parsons several times, kind of one-on-one blocking, and won like most of those situations against Parsons. So good job by him there. But the last thing I want to touch on from this, Roman Wilson's breakout day, and it could have actually been better. There's a play he probably wanted back. It was on that what should have been a offsides or neutral zone infraction that we just talked about. Rodgers threw it deep to Roman Wilson, and it was more or less a drop. And Roman Wilson could have ended up with over 100 yards and a touchdown. He still ended up having a pretty nice day overall. He ended with 74 yards and a touchdown. I think that would have been, he might not have been over 100. He might have been at like 99 or something. But yeah, I think Roman Wilson's an interesting thing, and this is a good way to segue into our trade deadline discussion. But do you think they need another receiver? Do you think Roman Wilson's finally here, or where are you at with that right now?
I just, even regardless of, I mean, Roman Wilson having that day, I think really shows that you don't need another receiver. But even if he didn't, I don't really know what another receiver is going to do for this offense. I mean, they were the passing attack has been fine all season. Like, I get it. Maybe if they were, had 5 or 6 wins and they're like, all right, we need one more guy that can really, like, give us that push to help Aaron Rodgers. But where they are now, I mean, I think they use their tight ends so often. I mean, they can get enough out of Roman Wilson. They can get enough out of Calvin Austin. I think it's notable that Roman Wilson's, breakout game came with Calvin Austin back, and Calvin
Mhm.
Austin still had 4 catches in the game too. So it's like there's room for both of them in this offense. I've just never been on the train that the receivers, their biggest team, because I don't believe they're going to be in the business of giving up the capital required to get a true needle mover. So you're going back to get like another Mike Williams type who's maybe going to play like 15-ish snaps a game, if that, like, and really not contribute that much. So I've always been in the camp that their needs lie elsewhere, but especially after this week now, seeing that Roman Wilson can maybe be a field stretcher, because Ian Rappaport's things, oh, the Steelers want speed. Well, Roman Wilson's a speed receiver, and he showed that on that first drive when he had the big catch there. And you have Calvin Austin. So I honestly think they're fine, especially like now it's Scotty Miller. Like, he might play this week. We'll see. Wouldn't be surprised if he was out, but like, or he could come back. So you have Scotty Miller who's in that mix too. So giving up draft capital for a receiver just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me at this point, given how much of a mess their defense is. If anything, I would just keep adding to the defense.
Yeah, Rodgers had some interesting words about Roman Wilson, basically saying, I like the kid, from the first time I met him back in Malibu, shortly after he signed with the team. He had many of the receivers out to Malibu to train with him prior to training camp. And I think he said that I told him I'm going to hold him to a higher standard than most, just because I see how good he can be. And Rodgers said he had arguably his best day of practice last week at the end of the week. And sure enough, it translated into the game. And I think he even mentioned that the first practice yesterday. Was it yesterday that he spoke to the media, Rodgers? Yeah, so he mentioned that Wilson's practice yesterday was similarly in line with that, where he had another big practice. So perhaps we're going to see another big game from Roman Wilson. And, if you see it back-to-back weeks, are you really going to go and trade for a guy? Unless it's like it would have to be a pretty high-end player, and at that point, is it worth it? I mean, I think there's a conversation to be had about, had the Steelers, I think I said it last week, I was starting to shift my thinking where, if Rodgers really is going to stay around for another season, because the Steelers appear to be running away with the division and appear to have a good shot at, doing some things this season, maybe they do trade for somebody significant and give up some draft capital, because, you can kind of kick the quarterback can down the road another year. You have somebody to actually throw that receiver that you trade for the ball, which there's no guarantee if Rodgers retires, who the heck is going to throw this expensive receiver room, assuming they traded for one, the ball. So my thinking had shifted, and very quickly that has shifted the other direction. Now it's like, man, is Rodgers really going to want to come back to this group? And if not, then why would they bother trading for somebody? Like, is it worth trying to capitalize on this group if the defense can't, stop anything at all? So, yeah, I've kind of come full circle in like a week's time on that. But I agree. I don't really see a big receiver trade taking place. However, Mike Tomlin said they're open for business. He said they're going to be buyers at the trade deadline. And sure enough, they already made their first trade, acquiring safety Kyle Dugger. We didn't really talk about it, but Deshaun Elliott did get injured There's some question whether he's out for the season, but we know he's out for the next 4 games because he's been placed on IR. Uh, with a hyperextended knee, I think is what Tomlin labeled it. Jeremy Fowler reports there might have been some hamstring damage as well, and Fowler maintains that he keeps hearing he's probably out for the season, where Tomlin sounded a little more optimistic. I don't really know, but regardless, they went and they got Dugger. Joe, what can you tell me about Dugger?
I think he's a solid replacement for Deshaun Elliott because he's really good at getting downhill, especially against the run. But the big thing here is if you look at the Steelers and their lack of splash plays, that's not really something that he's probably going to help out with. He's lost some of his athleticism. Um, he hasn't had a splash play in a long time. He had 9 turnovers from 2021 to 2023. He hasn't had one since. His lack of speed, like you can't rely on him as kind of, a deep safety, but I do like him as an Elliott replacement, as a guy that can get downhill, that can tackle, because that was really where Elliott stood out, especially last season and into this year, where he's a great tackling safety. Like last year, I think he was the best on the team. And with how awful the Steelers have been wrapping guys up and bringing them down, having another guy in the secondary that can get downhill and make plays and tackle, and especially for the price they paid, and with the Patriots eating some of his contract and voiding the last 2 years of his deal, it's a move I really like. Because I mean, I don't think Chuck Clark has been very good, and he's kind of the guy you're probably looking at as the most direct replacement for Elliott currently on the roster before they made this move. And now you're getting Kyle Dugger, who I think can come in and fill a role and at least, help stabilize the defense a little bit. I don't think he's as good as a Sean Elliott, but I do think that he can help, maybe stabilize the defense a little bit, especially against the run.
Yeah, Duggar, throughout his career, 2012 career snaps as a strong safety box defender type, 906 at free safety, 223 at wide corner, and 737 in the slot. And so this is a guy they can kind of move around a little bit. I don't know how much I really love them playing chess with the defense. I think they need to simplify, if anything, but he at least has that versatility to, be able to match up with maybe tight ends in the slot. And I mean, this is a guy with a pretty good body type, I would say. He's 6'1", 220. He ran a 4'4", 940 coming out. He's probably a little slower than that now, but he also jumped a 42-inch vertical. So this is a guy who was hyper athletic coming out of college there, and 32 and 7/8 inch arms. So this is, kind of more or less the type of defensive back the Steelers really like, and a good replacement for Elliott for just a 6th, 7th swap in the next draft. That's basically nothing. I think it was a great pickup, and I guess the only question is this all they're going to do? And I think that's where the conversation needs to continue. Is we talked about receiver, but I mean, gosh, are they going to make more moves on this defense? Is it even worth trying to salvage it at this point?
I think if you can get somebody for a low cost, you got to try all you can. I mean, one guy that stands out, and I think Josh floated him a few weeks ago too, and Fowler mentioned him as a potential trade candidate, is Alontae Taylor from the Saints, the former 2nd round pick at cornerback. And I know Corey Trice is going to come back, but I mean, I don't know how much you can trust Darius Slay to like play a lot of snaps. Like I would not be upset if Darius Slay just basically became a reserve. Then you're putting Brandon Echols into a big role. Brandon Echols wasn't great against Green Bay, so having another guy there, and then I know you're still gonna have Trice back, but you give yourself more options and more bodies for if these guys struggle. So I wouldn't be opposed to sending another late round pick for another defensive piece. I mean, they did it last year with an edge when they got Preston Smith. An edge was maybe the least of their needs. It ended up working out because Alex Highsmith got hurt, I think, like the next game. So having an extra body there was good. But I think if you can get somebody for a late round pick anywhere on this defense, just to try to give yourself a little bit more help, I would go for it, just because it's just been so bad.
Yeah, I agree. What I mean, so corners kind of your on your top of your wish list, I take it.
I would probably put corner up there, yeah, just because I think then at least you have some of the flexibility where you don't have to play Ramsey outside in base. You can play, you give yourself another option there. So I would think corner would probably be number one, and then from there, I mean, anywhere on defense. I mean, maybe you get another reserve defensive lineman to help replace Daniel Aquale because he tore his ACL against the Packers. So maybe getting another guy in the interior there who can give you some snaps. But not that they have to do something, but I would definitely like if they made another move defensively.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning Corey Trice Jr. is on IR, designated to return. Well, he was already on that, I believe, from the start of the season, but they opened his 21-day practice window, so he's soon to return to the roster, most likely. I think he talked to the media yesterday and said he's been ready to return for quite a while, but whatever roster math wasn't working out. Well, guess what? Darius Slay's down to playing 50% of the defensive snaps and probably less than that after another bad performance, and so this might be Trice's time to step up into the lineup and see if he can kind of inject some youth and speed and athleticism into that secondary. So maybe he's a solution there, but yeah, it wouldn't hurt to add someone else as well, because how much can you really count on Trice? He's basically just spent his whole career on IR so far. So, but in the limited times we did get to see him, it was encouraging. So it's one of those things where kind of, okay, this is exciting, I guess, but wait and see, I guess. A cautious approach on Trice, no doubt. But there's a lot of teams in the league that are most likely sellers. The Raiders 2-5, Titans 1-7. You probably don't count the AFC North people, although the Browns did trade the Bengals Joe Flacco, so I guess you can't rule anything out. But New York Jets 1-7. Giants probably not sellers just because they're trying to build that thing around Dart, but they are 2-6. Saints 1-7. Cardinals 2-5. So there's a bunch of teams that are probably going to be selling, and maybe some surprise stuff as well, like there always is at the deadline. I thought there was an interesting name thrown around I think the Jets are basically doing a fire sale over there, and there are some kind of interesting names. I don't know how much the Steelers need an inside linebacker, but I don't think they've gotten a ton out of that group either. We talked about it last week. Peyton Wilson seems to be this favorite guy of theirs, and since we last talked, he's now a team captain, so that kind of furthers our thinking of, okay, yeah, the team really thinks highly of him when his performance hasn't been that great, especially on defense. He is a special teams captain, so to be fair. But Quincy Williams was an interesting name thrown around by Peter Schrager. I don't know if they would do that, but he is in the final year of his deal. I don't know how much it would really cost, given that he's in the final year of his deal. Might be kind of a fourth, fifth, sixth kind. I mean, I don't know how much it would cost, to be honest. But this is a guy who, known as one of the better tacklers in the league. What are the Steelers bad at right now? Tackling. He's kind of a do everything linebacker, all pro a few years back. Great in coverage, great in tackling. I mean, this would be a guy you could put in next to Queen on an every down basis and potentially improve the defense a lot up the middle. Kind of an off the, I guess, outside the box idea there, but I thought it was interesting from Schrager, and I think it's not the least. I don't think it's completely out of the question, but are there any kind of outside the box names that you have thought of or circled or heard about?
I like the Quincy Williams one. There's really nothing that is coming to me that I would think or have thought about that's besides, the guys that have been bandied about as potential trade candidates because frankly, I don't know if the Steelers are going to be a team that goes outside the box because who knows without it. I mean, they did with the Jalen Ramsey trade, to be fair. So who knows what'll happen. And if they're really, really serious about moving the defense, and I mean, I guess it's kind of interesting to note that Brooke Pryor said that Darius Slay could be on the move, but I think that's just complete BS because who wants Darius Slay? And I think she was just throwing a name there because he got his snaps reduced. Um, so like maybe if like someone for some godforsaken reason wants Darius Slay at this point in his career, but I don't really I don't have anything really to add there.
All right. Well, I think that's all on our trade deadline discussion. That's coming up on Tuesday. So next time we talk to you guys, the trade deadline will be done, and we'll have probably at least one more trade, if I had to guess, to talk about. We'll see how significant that is, but I don't think that they're done. Oh, I did want to talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, because there was a report that he was going to sign with the team, and then Mike Tomlin more or less said, what did he say? He said he's in for a visit, but that they basically, reports started surfacing that Scantling was not going to sign with the team this week. And I think the original report of him signing said it might be a little bit before he ultimately does sign. And since then, Aaron Rodgers made some interesting comments saying that Valdes-Scantling wants to be on an active roster. And so maybe he'll look for other opportunities. It sounds like the Steelers probably wanted him on the practice squad to start things. And so I guess that one's still up in the air. To me, it sounds like he's not coming at this point, but There's still people, there's still news outlets like ESPN writing that he has signed, and just kind of are assuming that that is a done deal when I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think it could honestly depend on if the Steelers add a receiver this week, and then it's like, all right, we added somebody, then like, thank you for your time. Don't have any interest in signing you anymore. If they don't, maybe he comes in, and even if he starts on the practice squad, if they promise him he'll be elevated and he'll have a role soon. Yeah, it was weird because both Jordan Schultz and Jeremy Fowler reported that he was signing, and then Fowler's like, timing is unclear on when the move will actually happen, but he's signing with Pittsburgh. And it was like, whoa, what do you mean timing's unclear if he's in Pittsburgh right now and he's not signing the deal yet? So yeah, that's interesting matter. So I don't know. I have no idea whether or not he's going to come or not at this point. It's been a very confusing 3 days.
I think he was on IR, so maybe some injury stuff. Although I don't think that's really been talked about as a reason why he hasn't. So that's just kind of me throwing that out there right now. But Rodgers said it's one of his all-time favorite teammates, and it would make sense to get somebody who has that chemistry because we saw how slow the Steelers were to integrate Mike Williams last year. You don't want a repeat of that where you trade for somebody and barely integrate them by the time week 16, 17 rolls around, and you'd think Valdez-Scantling, just by knowing Rodgers' hand signals and all that, would have a leg up there. And if Scotty Miller's finger injury, broken finger, is more of a concern, then there's a spot in theory open for Valdez-Scantling. So I won't completely shut the door, but it sounds to me like it's leaning towards not happening at the moment. We'll see, like you said, probably after the trade deadline, what happens there. We'll move into previewing the Colts. I think we've kind of touched on most of the Steelers' injury things from the game, but Mike Tomlin said Isaac Seumalo, the door seems open for him to play, basically, because Tomlin said a guy like him doesn't need as much practice to be ready, which more or less hints that, we'll see how his practice participation looks at the end of the week. He has a pec strain. Last year, it held him out of like 3 or 4 games at the beginning of the season. This one doesn't appear to be as serious, but as we talked about with the jumbo package, that has big ramifications for the Steelers' offense. And so I think Jerry Dulac said that he would miss 1 game, if any. And so a potential, it sounds like a strong potential for Seumalo to end up playing. Deshaun Elliott, we already said IR. Scotty Miller, broken finger. We'll see how that progresses throughout the week. And then Daniel Aquale to IR with a torn ACL. That means more opportunities for Y.A. Black, the rookie, one of everybody's favorite rookies from training camp. So I think that'll be a welcome bit of news there in terms of just Black getting more involved. Obviously, you don't want anyone else to be hurt. But to me, Black has kind of underperformed the hype from the preseason. He hasn't really looked that great in his limited opportunities, but more opportunities, maybe he'll accelerate his learning curve a little bit. Did I miss anything on the Steelers' end of things there?
No, I think that's everything. I know Zach Frazier was out again yesterday, but I mean, he was fine last week. And Tomlin said, never really specifically mentioned him. Said some guys would be limited earlier in the week, so I don't think that's anything really to note on Frazier.
All right, over to the Colts side of things, if you have that pulled up.
I do. Colts had a lot of guys miss practice this year. I think they had 9 guys out. Among them were defense linemen Taekwon Lewis and Samson Ebukam, who their status will be interesting to note throughout the week. Both of them are good rotational defensive linemen for the Colts. Anthony Gould, I believe he's their returner, and he's also gotten more reps because they've kind of phased out A.D. Mitchell ever since his drop ahead of the end zone that took a touchdown off the board in their only loss against the Rams. Safety Nick Cross has a shoulder. Josh Downs had a hip. He's been banged up throughout the year, so that'll be interesting to see. I think he had a concussion. He was cleared, and I think the hip might be something new. So that'll be one to watch. Grover Stewart with a foot. He's a key defensive lineman for them. So here are the defensive line with Ebicom, Lewis, and Stewart. Those guys will be worth monitoring throughout the week. Kenny Moore had an Achilles and in practice, but he's been playing the last few weeks. And then Matt Goncalves, who's an offensive lineman for them, his father passed away, so he did not practice yesterday. And then I guess on the good injury news for the Colts, Jalen Jones missed their win last week against Tennessee with a hamstring injury, and he practiced in full yesterday. So he'll probably be back out there, which is good news for a Colts secondary that is banged up with Travarius Ward, who had that freak concussion when he ran into their tight end in pregame warmups. He's on IR, and he won't play. And he had been the number 1 cornerback. So good news for them to have Jalen Jones back. Bad news for the Steelers, I guess. So the Colts are getting fully healthy in the secondary, but that was the only player that practiced in a full or even limited that was listed on their injury report yesterday.
Couple matchup things from this game that I wanted to talk about. It just feels like Mike Tomlin has not matched up well against Steichen and his teams lately. I think last year Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson started things off very strong. Joe Flacco continued that and pretty much beat up on the Steelers last year. It was one of those embarrassing losses near the beginning of the season. So, I mean, given how the defense has been playing and given how the Colts offense has been playing, which is like historically good, big worries there. It's kind of a pick your poison matchup here for Pittsburgh because, Pittsburgh always talks about taking away the other team's top, producer, and that would be Jonathan Taylor. But Michael Pittman's been having a good year. Tight end, Tyler Warren, the rookie, has been having a good year. And so where do you, if you're the defense, who are you attacking? What are you trying to stop? I don't even know where to start.
I mean, the Colts have schemed up their run so well against their run game so well against the Steelers, especially the last 2 years. When Taylor was out 2 years ago, it was Trey Sermon, it was Tyler Goodson. They cooked the Steelers. I mean, also the Steelers are starting Mitch Trubisky that game, so that you could say they were doomed from the start. But the Colts run game, there was guys like just came out of nowhere to have the best games of their career. Taylor last year against them had 88 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries. As a team, they ran for 133 yards. Richardson had a few scrambles. And I think they gave AD Mitchell a run too that he took for 10 yards. So I think you got to key on stopping the run because if you let Taylor get going, then you're it's hopeless. But yeah, I mean it is. Pittman's been really good. Warren's been a stud. He's been plug and play NFL ready tight end, probably one of the best in the league this year. So you have a lot of areas you have to stop. I mean, there's a reason why this offense is number one in the league right now, but I think you really have to key on stopping Taylor just because of how good he's been this year. And if he gets going early, then it's just going to be a runaway train.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if there's too many other. I mean, how the defense play. All eyes are going to be on the Steelers' defense. I guess if there's one area of hope, it's the fact that the Colts' passing defense is right there with the Steelers in terms of one of the worst in the league. The Steelers, I think, are the dead last, and the Colts, I think, are 28th or 29th. So they're down there in terms of you can pass on them. So I think this is going to need to be a shootout type of game. Hopefully that involves some Roman Wilson. I think we would all like to see more DK Metcalf and, certainly for Metcalf to maximize those opportunities because there's been more than a few this year that he's gotten pretty good opportunities that have slipped out of his hands. I think, that turnover against the Bengals was an example. I think he had at least one. Did he have a drop in the end zone this last game? That it was not really a drop, but like the defender kind of worked his hand through. Was that this past game?
I think so.
Yeah, so DK Metcalf's had, I don't know if you want to call it drop issues or just issues winning the 50-50 ball, but you would like to see him win more of those. And so I think the big thing you're looking for is for the passing offense of Pittsburgh to do well. Anything else you wanted to touch on there? Or should we get to our listener question here?
I think we can go to the question.
All right, this one's from Brett in San Angelo.
Hello, Depot Dive. This is Brett from San Angelo. And with the kind of negative mood, I wanted to maybe shift subject to something that wouldn't be so depressing. So my question or wanting your thoughts on a couple of potential rule changes. The first one is on the 2-point try. During the game, you saw them mug Washington. That wasn't a penalty, it was a crime. But essentially because there was nothing to lose, because the penalty on the goal line moved it from the 2 to the 1, essentially didn't change the play and kind of cost you to burn a 2-point play. To me, that should be much more negatively, it should be a much bigger consequence, because there basically is none. To me, I think if the defense commits a penalty on the 2-point conversion, the try should simply be good. Now, the offense, the penalties, if they hold something, at least you're moving it back the regular amount, 10 yards, etc. So to me, what do you think about making the defensive penalty on the 2-point conversion essentially a conversion? And if you wanted to say a penalty on the offense was an automatic failure, that would be fine too by me. But I think those are two slightly different arguments. Love to hear your thoughts on that. And then the other one, to me, is common sense, but just see if you agree. Why in the world is offsides and false start not reviewable? You have a camera pointing right down the line. You can see when the ball moves. It is perfect for review. Why in the world is that not? It should at least be challengeable, don't you think? All right, I'll shut up and listen to your answer. Thank you.
All right, a little two-parter here from Brett. The first one being basically wanting a goaltending type of situation, NBA goaltending, where if you do the goaltending, the points count and whatever. So on 2 points conversion specifically, citing the Darnell Washington, the pass interference there on the 2-point conversion near the end of the game. I think you just end up with a bunch of Darnell Washingtons running a bunch of fades and basically being an unstoppable play. And then, that becomes an exploit eventually. I mean, where does the line stop for the penalty stuff? If say someone's doing a tush push from the one and it's a offsides or something, or an encroachment, or I don't know, whatever other penalty you'd want, is that going to end up being a score? I think there are situations where that wouldn't be the best of ideas necessarily, but it is an interesting idea nonetheless. And yeah, I think the Steelers, they should have ended up converting on that, because I think Jonnu Smith, he dropped that, did he not? Yeah. So, you say there's no consequence, but it does move them closer. And when you're on the 1 yard line, you ought to be able to score. How hard is it to get a yard? I know that, goal line stands are a thing, and it can be difficult because there's not much space to work, but, you ought to be able to punch it in from the 1, especially in those moments. You don't deserve to win if you can't. And so that's kind of my attitude on that. Joe, anything different on that first part?
Yeah, I fully agree. You should be able to score from the 1, and if you can't, then that's on you.
And the second part being the replay assist and kind of the reviews, being able to add penalties to the field, especially on those clear-cut and obvious. Brett, it was interesting because it felt like they were about to do that on that play, because the refs ended up conferring after that play for a very long time, and even the announcers were like, what's happening? Can they even add the penalty this late since they didn't throw it? Everybody agreed that it was the most obvious offsides ever, and the review couldn't have been more clear, but they didn't end up adding that. And so I don't know exactly. I would love to know. I wish there was a poll report from that game where the refs kind of talked about what they were conferring during that moment, because I don't think that they can add a penalty. The replay assist rules, you can't. They can't add a penalty. Should they be able to? I think that opens a can of worms potentially. I don't know I haven't thought through all the exact blowback, or I guess unintended consequences there, what they would be. But that would be my only caution is, do you want a situation where penalties are... I don't want any situation where penalties are being added routinely after the play, because I get mad enough when a ref throws it like 4 or 5 seconds after the play. I'm like, what's going on? So I personally, I don't know if I would like that. Joe?
Yeah, I just think you have no flow of the game. If you look at that Bengals game, it seemed like Orlando Brown Jr. was jumping early every single play. And if you make this challengeable, then you're going to have coaches throwing the flag at every single play. Like, oh, he jumped. And you have absolutely zero game flow. So I agree with you. It just adds more penalties to the game. It takes away the flow. I understand the frustration and why, some of these plays should be obvious. But honestly, the refs don't really miss, a clear and obvious offsides that often that it's something that should need to be implemented. It was just all around, or the officiating was horrible on Sunday night. And it was a bad miss. It hurt the Steelers, but I just don't think there's enough instances of that happening for it to become reviewable.
Yeah, you hate those things in key moments, but it wasn't a game decider. Like I said earlier, it was 3rd and 8. It would have just been 3rd and 3. They still had to make the play happen after that. And the Steelers benefited from bad officiating at one point earlier in the game when Broderick Jones false started very clearly, and I think that ended up being like a 14-yard, 15-yard run, and so it was a pretty nice play for them on that. That could have been wiped out, and so they give and they take away, but I get the frustration there, and certainly that was the beginning of the turning point of the game for Pittsburgh, and so it is, you kind of circle that and say what if, but it's hard to say what if when they got outscored 28-9 in the second half overall. Thank you for the questions, Brett. If you guys want a question answered, 412-254-3145. If I spoke too fast, that's in the show notes as well. We hope to hear questions from some of you that we haven't heard from before. That is, we would like your name, where you're from, and a brief question to have that answered on a future episode. I'm Ross, that is Joe, and we will catch you guys next time on the other side of the trade deadline.